Welcome fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic 90s nerds to my channel, Slime and Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything from Nickelodeon slime to horror movie slashers, but plenty of stuff in between too. Today, however, we are talking both about 90s nostalgia and horror, so combining my two loves. There's not really slashers per se, but it's horror, which is kind of, you know, in the realm of what slashers would fall into. So slime and slashers kind of all covered in this video. So right after this short intro, we'll come back and we'll talk about my nostalgic 90s horror readathon that I did for the month of November. And I'm super excited because it was a great reading month. Can't wait to talk about the books with you guys. So right after this, you'll hear what I thought about all the 9 books that I read for that month. '90s, 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 '90s. It's everywhere. 90s! So as you guys can see from looking around at my background, aka my office space, you can tell that I might like the 90s. My shirt is 90s as well. But that is an understatement because I am truly like the definition of a 90s kid. I love all things 90s. And so I wanted to do a readathon. The whole idea behind this November readathon was nostalgia, and specifically 90s nostalgia, which kind of my whole channel is based around. So I wanted to do something where I could base prompts on different things from the 90s that I loved. So whether that be movies or TV shows or other book series that I could base a prompt off of, that's what I did. And that's where the brainchild came from. I was just thinking to myself, I gotta do something with the 90s, but also with reading, not just TV and movies like I always talk about. So this was a perfect way to combine like everything that I enjoy. I do want to quickly say thank you to everyone who participated in the readathon with me. So many of you guys tagged me on social media, especially Instagram. Thank you so much to everyone who did that, and I was so pleased with seeing your posts and your updates about your reading progress, and oh my god, it was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It was a real success in my opinion, and I have you guys to thank for that. And before we go into the books and the statistics, I do want to change my shirt to have multiple thematic 90s shirts throughout this video. So say goodbye to this shirt, which my dad got me. It says 90s. I'm going to wear a different 90s themed shirt, and then we'll get into everything. I am back, and I'm wearing a different shirt, and this one is a specific Home Alone t-shirt, and it says, knock, knock, knockin' on Kevin's door, and it's the wet/sticky bandit. So pretty great. I guess it has to be the wet bandit since they only knock on Kevin's door when he's home alone, like at his actual house in Home Alone 1. Home Alone 2, obviously he's in New York. But one of my prompts is based off of Home Alone, and that's one of my favorite movies of all time, Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. So I thought it was appropriate that I wore a Home Alone t-shirt. I've got a Home Alone poster right here, so it all fits, it all works. So for my statistics, let's actually get into this now. So for this readathon, I had 9 total prompts, and I did complete every single prompt. I did an individual book. People could have double dipped, but I did not. But I did an individual book for each prompt. So that would mean I did 9 titles. Woo! I did it! I did it! And I have a little bingo card that I put together that shows all the prompts and like little images I had, and that's what people used when they tagged me on Instagram to say that they were, you know, making progress and moving right along. So yeah, I did all of the 9 prompts you see on the bingo card, and very exciting. So I read 7 physical books, and then I listened to 2 audiobooks. So for the 7 physical books, I actually read a total of 1,881 pages. Pretty impressive for me, especially because I'm not a fast reader, and some of the books I chose were rather long, and I was so afraid I wouldn't get to them. Like 4 of them are longer type of books. I mean, I did have a few middle grade and young adult books in here, and one Goosebumps that was really short, but overall, everything was a decent length, and so I'm very happy with the amount of pages because it's, for me, it's a lot. And I will go through my list of reads from least favorite to favorite. I don't know why I'm doing it that way. I just think that'd be a lot more fun where I reveal to you guys which one was my absolute favorite at the very end. Alright, so my least favorite read. Dun, 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 The Troop by Gordon Linsner. And the funny thing is, so I was telling my book club about this book, and I was like, some vintage horror can be a hit or it can be a miss. And I said I was reading a book called The Troop, and Grady Hendrix started talking about someone getting breakdanced to death, which does happen in the book, by the way. It's all very subdued, though. It's so weird that you can say that. Like, someone getting breakdanced to death sounds extreme. No, it's super subtle, and it's not even that great. You thought it would be awesome. No, no, no. I mean, like, I think eyes do bulge from, like, not being able to stop spinning on the dude's head, because that's what he's doing. He's, like, spinning on his head. Like, I can't even attempt to, like, to mimic what that move is, but you guys know what I'm saying. You got, like, a piece of cardboard, the dude's spinning on his head, or the lady. Anybody could be a breakdancer. But in this case it was a guy, and yeah, like, he couldn't stop and his eyes were bulging out. I'm making it sound better than it was, because, like, while reading it, it wasn't that exciting, which is so surprising. So I was telling my book club, like, yeah, you know, you'd think it'd be great, but it wasn't that great, so, you know, this would be a miss for me. And they were like, oh, one of my friends said, are you talking about, like, The Troop by Nick Cutter? And I was like, no, 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 there's too many troops. This is a troop with an E. So, different troop. Both books called The Troop, but different spelling. And also different meaning, because this troupe is like a troupe of theater people and, like, performers and street sellers, and the premise could have been so good. And actually, the book was well written. It wasn't like it was a trashy novel in terms of, oh, the writing is just horrible and yada yada yada. This was actually well done. But that didn't save it at all. It was still kind of slow, still kind of boring. And I started this after I finished, like, one of my favorite books that I read for the entire readathon. So it was almost, like, slumpy. Like, it almost put me in a slump. But no, no, no. I pushed through, and I pushed through, and I was like, okay, yeah. It's not like it wasn't entertaining in some ways. It just was so slow. There was parts that didn't need to be there. The idea was cool, but, like, I don't know. It just didn't deliver with the action, with the horror. So here's the premise, essentially. And I'm going to read you the premise versus essentially giving you it in my own words, because I think I couldn't summarize. It's a very, like, random type of plot for this book. So, by the way, the prompt that I did for this one was the prompt called So Bad It's Good, in honor of Troll 2, and basically read a book that is so notoriously outrageous, wacky, or weird that you just have to check it out. Again, from Grady Hendrix's review about the breakdancing, I was like, oh, this could fit the bill. It could be so weird that it's good. And when I told everybody about his review and what he said, they're like, you gotta check it out then. You gotta choose to read this one for that prompt. And so I was on the fence about choosing this one. I'm glad I read it, but, like, not my favorite. I love the cover. The cover, I think, is the best thing about the book, way more than the actual story. Like, look at the wonderful colors down here. Kind of very 90s and very bright. But the thing is, this was actually published in the 80s. This was published in 1988, and again, you didn't have to read books published in the 90s, so that didn't matter. But this one, what it's about is,
they fan out across the city, perfectly disguised, as a mime, a toy vendor, a con artist. Rabid with hunger, they bore into their victims, gorging on fear and desire, killing them in silence.
so, essentially, it's like, almost like they're vampires that suck energy. So it's not like sucking physical blood, it's almost like they're sucking, like, fear, despair, anxiety, and they're in New York City in this book, and so they're kind of, like, there, and they've got a treasure trove of anxiety and insecurities to feed off of. So it's a good place for them, but there are people who are suspicious of what's going on. There's somebody on the hunt for them and trying to get them to stop killing innocent people. So that's kind of what's happening, is this one person who used to be in the troupe is going around and, like, you know, trying to silence them and take them out so they won't be killing random people who are already sad and depressed and anxious and, like, trying to live life but not really having a good time, and these people are taking advantage of that. So yeah, I don't know, it was okay. So what I rated it was a 3.5 star rating. I rounded it down for Goodreads. Like I said, it wasn't that it was badly written, it just wasn't super entertaining. Essentially, the idea of the prompt is for something that is really entertaining. Like, if you think of the movie Troll 2, which this prompt that I did is based off of, that was the whole inspiration for the prompt itself, is that Troll 2 is bad. It's not really well done, but it's entertaining. Like a book like Toy Cemetery, that would almost fit the bill for this prompt. It is so zany, it is so weird, it's not really written well. It's kind of all over the place, actually. But it keeps you hooked because you're like, this is absurd, this is weird, this is crazy, this is so powerful, like in terms of over the top level of the plot. It draws you in and keeps you going to see like how can it get crazier. This was not that. This was not that at all. Still glad I read it though overall. Already long-winded, that's great. Alright, second, and again I'm going from least favorite to favorite read. Second would be sadly Fun House by Diane Ho. This is a point horror book, and I mean, it looks promising. Everything about it looks promising, from the cover, like artistry, to the premise on the back of the book, to the idea that part of it takes place in the funhouse. Again, this was really cool, but the execution wasn't there. So when I pick up a book entitled Funhouse, I expect fun houses, lots of stuff happening in a fun house, in a theme park. There was some things happening in a theme park, it just wasn't very prominent in terms of the feel of it. It didn't feel like an amusement park. It didn't feel like things were happening in the fun house very much. It was more about teenage drama surrounding it. So because of that, I couldn't give it a higher rating.
When the Devil's Elbow roller coaster goes off its track and several teenagers are hurt, everyone thinks it was just an accident. So no one listens when Tess says she saw someone tampering with the track.
And so then Tess starts to realize it's not just an accident. She's the only one saying anything. No one else believes her. And so that's what's kind of frustrating in this book. I listened to it on audio, which didn't really help either, because sometimes they make the main characters in these young adult novels, they make them sound so hysterical, and I really don't like that, because I feel like, obviously, Tess knew what was happening, it wasn't an accident, and there was a series of, quote, accidents that weren't that. They were on purpose. They were someone trying to hurt other people. And so, we all know that going in, that that's what's going to end up taking place, that it's like a killer on the loose doing things to hurt people. And yet, I don't know, I just feel like the characterization of Tess is a little over the top in terms of the narration. Just, she sounded, same thing, I mean, I'm about to say it in a second about Overdue. It's the same idea. The audiobook narrator made her sound hysterical in Overdue as well, the main character. And so I don't like that, because I don't think they should just make the teenager sound hysterical because, you know, she's facing a lot of odds and stuff. And basically every worry was like, am I going crazy? These people don't believe me. And everyone's like trying to justify why they don't believe them. Like, oh, you're just tired. Oh, you're this and that. It just kind of comes off kind of patronizing. The way you just read that over and over again. It's like, come on. At a certain point, people would believe her. And it takes just absurdly long for people to even consider that she could be right. I don't know. It bothered me. I don't know why. It bothered me. But again, fun idea. Fun house. Fun idea. But no. Sadly, no. I rated it a 3.5 rounded down. I read this book for the prompt that was based off of an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. The episode was called The Tale of Laughing in the Dark, and the prompt said to read a book or a story with a carnival, funhouse, circus, setting, or theme, or read a book or story featuring a clown. So this fit because it literally did have scenes in a funhouse, but again, not enough. Next book I'm going to talk about, I don't have a physical copy. I wish I did, because I would have preferred to read it physically. I had to basically listen to the audiobook, and as I just referenced a second ago, this was the book I was talking about, Overdue by Richie Tankersley-Cusick. I was so annoyed with the narrator, making the main character just sound like over the top. The best part was the setting. So whereas Funhouse didn't really have that much going on in the funhouse itself, Overdue had a lot of scenes in the library and just a lot of talk about books, but there was also the same problem as in Funhouse, where the main character was just not believed, and everyone was like,
you're just hysterical, you're just upset, you can't be right, you can't be really, experiencing these things.
Like, it was just patronizing. And it was too much. It was like way overdone. And just the way the narrator read those lines of the main character, where she's thinking in her head, no one believes me, or she's coming up screaming to like one of her friends, that's what like just put it over the top. I would rather have just read it in my head, and I wouldn't have made the character that frantic, because that's why people were thinking she was all hysterical and not in her right mind, but she was. So she was the only one who knew what was going on. Essentially, kind of the same idea here. All these accidents keep happening around the library and around this one girl. They're not accidents, though. And so I had high hopes for this one. Alas, this one I had to give the exact same rating as I did Funhouse and The Troop. I gave this which was Overdue that we're talking about, a 3.5. I'm going to round it down on Goodreads. I have not officially rated it yet. I read this book for my prompt that was about The Page Master, the movie from 1994. So my prompt said to read a book or a story about books or libraries, or a story or book featuring either of those things heavily in the setting or the plot. So this Overdue, multiple scenes in the library, and the killer was giving hints about what was going on through books, but only this one girl could see these clues and hints and threats, essentially, that were books. Then she'd turn around and mysteriously the book or the hint would be gone. And so that was annoying. Like, oh, it was so frustrating to just be like, oh my god, just grab the book right away. Don't, like, lollygag and let someone take the evidence. And that's why no one was believing her as well, because the evidence was gone. Like, she turned it back for a second. The evidence is gone. Come on. It was kind of hard to believe. Oh, it could have been so much more because the setting was marvelous. And it was a lot better in terms of setting than Funhouse was, in my opinion. So the next book I read was for my book club, actually, my personal book club, not my channel book club that I'm about to start up. I have a personal one that's private, and we read The Reckoning. I got them to vote for this, which was awesome because I could double dip for my own readathon and for my book club read, so it really worked out really well for me. So this is by Ruby Jean Jensen, and it was my first Ruby Jean Jensen read. Will not be my last. She's actually reprinting, not she, because she's passed on, but someone who has the rights to her work is reprinting her work in new editions. So this is a new hardcover edition of The Reckoning. Of course, there's a cool old school copy. I'm sure it has a doll on the cover because a lot of her old covers have dolls on them. So this one was decent. I didn't dislike it. In fact, some of it was quite compelling to where you didn't want to stop reading. However, there were a lot of unanswered things, a lot of loose ends that weren't tied up, in my opinion. It just left a lot of room for, like, wondering what the hell is that supposed to mean? Why did this happen? This doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. Even if you have a supernatural element, none of it adds up and makes sense. Not none of it, but some of the big things that, like, you start to question, that stuff does not add up. And so that was what was frustrating. I have a friend, Rachel, who's in the book club. She's actually read other Ruby Jean Jensen books and liked them more. I believe she's read Haunted was one. There's a list of other books in the back. So she read The Haunting and what other one? I can't remember what other one she read. I thought maybe it was House of Illusions, but maybe I'm wrong. I actually do own House of Illusions and The Haunting, but I will get to those, and I'm really excited to read more Ruby Jean Jensen. So although my questions weren't answered, although I was left a little confused in areas, it was still exciting. It was still fun, and like I said, it won't stop me from checking out more RJJ in the future. So the premise of this is what I read before I give you the premise. I read this for the prompt that was kind of about evil kids. So the prompt was based on Rugrats, the wonderful show from the 90s that I personally really love. And I say from the 90s, it did go on for quite a long time, but I only like the first 3 seasons of Rugrats. I think that's the best Rugrats seasons and episodes. Once you get past that, and once you get past the movie that was released, I feel like it starts to go downhill because Dill ruined the show, in my opinion. Like, Dill, the babies stopped kind of going on adventures. Basically, all they kept having to do was keep Dill out of trouble or deal with one of Dill's stupid messes. So yeah, after Dill came along, it kind of ruined it for me. And my dad feels the same way because he used to watch it with me, and he likes cartoons, so he liked Rugrats quite a bit. So we both feel like after Dill, downhill. But if you guys like Dill, all the more power to you, but I just don't. So the prompt was based on Rugrats, and the prompt said, read a book with a kid or baby on the cover or in the story, preferably an evil one. That's why I chose, like, something with evil kids, which this fit perfectly. So the premise, and the reason why it fit that prompt is,
Night of the Children. The earth below the revival tent shook, bringing Pastor Walsh's meeting to a close. Was this some mysterious force that God had unleashed in response to his preaching? And how could anyone explain the sudden appearance and disappearance of Patrick, the youth suspected of murder who had been missing for more than a year? At the back of the tent, perhaps it was a force unleashed by the lingering knowledge of what had occurred in the small town and the desire to make amends for the deadly evil.
so essentially, not just Patrick that they referenced here in the back of the book, there were other kids that had disappeared that all of a sudden, after this preacher has this revival meeting, they start seeing all of these long ago disappeared children. And the children aren't what they seem. They look the same as they did even after been missing for years. You would think that they would have grown or been in different clothes. No. So they appear around town, they're wearing the same shit, they are kind of mean. They're actually like, trying to kill dogs and crap. So they're not good kids anymore. When they went missing, they were good kids. At the time, no one knows what happened to all these kids, and all these disappearances kept happening over the years. It wasn't just like in a very small cluster, it happened over many years, and more questions are raised when this revival happens and all the kids start appearing again. And so a lot of the parents who have been missing these kids for years, it's their kids, they're all confused on how to feel, like, oh god, they don't seem like normal, but oh my god, I miss them. And so that creates a lot of stuff that goes down and transpires. So my book club all had the same feeling about this as me. They all say, oh, we enjoyed it, it was entertaining, it was kind of like a page turner in some parts, although it did slow down, and I feel like there were too many adult characters in this book that didn't need to be there. So those are some of the cons, but overall, at least it was exciting for the most part, besides those few instances where it slowed down and introduced a ton of people. So for the ratings, I gave this a 3.5 rounded up. I actually haven't rated it yet, but it will be a 3.5 rounded up to 4 on Goodreads, and I would recommend it because it is worth picking up. Ruby Jean Jensen, it's so funny when you look at the back of the book. She's like a sweet old cutie, like, oh, look at her, cutie! I like calling older people like cuties because I think they're so adorable and cute. Like people who remind me of my grandparents who I like adored when they were alive. So to me, like any older people, I'm like, oh my god, I love them. They're so cute. They're cutie oldies. So she just looks so cute and innocent. And then like she's literally writing at one point about this suit of skin. Like someone gets skinned and their skin is lying on the bed. So someone thinks that like the person's lying down. Nope, it's just their skin, bitch. And then there is what looks like, a line of blood across their neck, but no, it's a necklace that has been laid out over the skin. Almost like the skin has been dressed up. And so like, that's the part that like is worth reading. Like, hell yeah. There's some gruesome stuff in this book, and that's what really made it a lot of fun. That sounds very weird, but you guys know what I mean because you are fellow horror fans, most likely if you're checking out this channel. So that's some of the reasons to definitely check it out, or some of the gruesome parts. And yeah, like I said, more than one person actually gets skinned, so not just that one lady. But yeah, it's pretty nuts, the description. So when you see that old lady and then you read some of the stuff she's writing in terms of the deaths, you're like, oh my god, this is so crazy. This is insane that she wrote this, and that's why this is kind of not at the bottom of the barrel. It was kind of like in the middle range. Okay, next up we have Night of the Living Dummy. This is a Goosebumps book, and literally one of my prompts just said read a Goosebumps book because it's one of the most famous book series of the 90s in its entirety. Like, you couldn't go anywhere without hearing about Goosebumps because not only were the books popular, but then the show came along and that was super popular too. So if you were a kid growing up in the 90s, you most likely either read or watched Goosebumps. It was just kind of a given and almost like a necessity to like have a great, rewarding, fulfilling childhood. And so I didn't read a lot of the Goosebumps books as a kid, and I never read this one as a kid, but I did watch the show quite a bit. In fact, I had The Haunted Mask on VHS, which I still have back at my mom and dad's house. It's still in the case and everything, the tape itself. So I'll have to show you guys that one day. I'm going to do a VHS tour back at their house and show you what kind of tapes I have. But this one I had not read. I had watched a lot of the shows, not read this book though. And of course I knew about Slappy, and I thought Slappy would be the main antagonist of this whole book. But then come to find out, actually, it's not Slappy, which is kind of funny. I'm like, what the hell? I thought Slappy was like the big, like famous, one of the Goosebump mascots, like, and I thought so he'd be the star of the book. So I was a little surprised about that. There were some other twists and turns, and it was good, which all Goosebumps are good. All Goosebumps are quick, easy, and fun. So if you're on the fence, just pick up a Goosebumps. It's a great way to get out of a slump. It's a great way to read a book quickly and like to add it to your Goodreads goal for the year. I don't know, just great books to read. So this one I gave the same rating as I gave The Reckoning, 3.5 rounded up to 4 for Goodreads. I almost would tie these neck and neck. I'm going from least favorite to favorite, so I just told you about this one, so you would think, okay, well, Kelsi liked Night of the Living Dummy better, since, it's more towards the end of her discussion. She's going from least favorite to favorite. Nah, these are actually almost tied. It's not my favorite Goosebumps read that I've read so far this year, because I've actually been reading quite a few Goosebump books. But yeah, it was still good. Essentially, this book is about two sisters, and they're both kind of fighting over who gets to use this dummy they found kind of near this abandoned house next door that's being built. And they want to try to develop a whole act with the dummy. And so they're kind of vying for this dummy, and then the parents buy the other girl a dummy. So there's two dummies, and I guess that's giving some things away, but not really. You know, which dummy is really the bigger evil, what's going on, why, how is this happening? So it's kind of interesting, but again, just not my favorite. Like, if I had to pick a favorite that I've read this year, I mean, the Jelly Jam frickin' book was great. That was amazing. That had like such a weird, wacky ending, like was unforgettable. There's a lot I could name above this one, but still glad I read it. And again, this was for my Goosebumps prompt, which was the easiest prompt, I think, because literally all you had to do was read a Goosebumps. It could have been any Goosebumps. There's tons of them to choose from, so it was a lot of fun. I do want to point out my brand new Goosebumps art book that I got. I posted about it on Instagram, so if you guys follow me on Instagram at SuperKidKid, you might have already seen the book, but it's all about the art, and it's called The Art of Goosebumps by Sarah Rodriguez, and it was published by Dynamite. Good stuff. It's beautiful on the inside. There's basically in fact, I'll show you. So each book has a layout that looks like this. So you've got the final artwork here. You've got some, like, you know, facts and tidbits, but I think the best part, and sorry for the glare, is the sketches that you get. So yeah, you could see at the top, that's kind of more of what the cover ended up being, but look at some of the other options that were sketched down here for potential covers that weren't ever used. So that's what I think is cool, is that, okay, here we have the dummy, like, sitting on a stage, here we have him coming out of a box. I just like that there's, like, you know, different ones that I didn't know that there were other options. And so it just has like some cool like facts and tidbits. Really, it's mostly about the art. There's not a lot of writing in here. There's not a lot of, I hate to say, but substance in terms of things you might have not known. It's more about, look at these sketches that you've never seen before. Look at what could have been the cover of one of your favorite Goosebump books. So there is an interview with Tim Jacobus at the beginning, who did a lot of the Goosebump covers. There's some excerpts from an interview with R.L. Stine at the beginning too. And throughout the book, there's little things that R.L. Stine said, like Stine says here about what does he say about this book and this cover. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that peek at my Goosebumps art book, because I'm very excited to have it. And I can't wait to actually read the whole thing and look at the whole thing, because I've only glanced at it as of now. So the next book I want to talk about that I read for November was Rats by Paul Zindel. You might be asking, why didn't you read The Rats by James Herbert? I was just afraid it'd be too long. This is a middle grade book. Look how large the text is. And actually, I learned about this from Cameron Chaney's channel, aka Library Macabre, and he actually read an excerpt from the very beginning of the book that was super gruesome on one of his like shelf tours or something. And I was like, holy shit, that book sounds awesome. I love animal attack stories, so I knew I would like this once he started reading it. And once I made the prompt about animal attack books, I was like, I need to choose the book Cameron talked about, so I ordered it. And the cool thing is, like I said, you didn't have to read books published in the 90s, but this one happened to be published in the 90s, so that kind of was like, oh, it's extra thematic for the 90s readathon, that it was actually published in the 90s at the very end of 1999, so at the very end of the 90s, but it still counts. I'm actually going to read you guys some excerpts from this because it's gruesome, like I said. Cameron read something from the beginning, as I just stated, but I'm going to read you other parts that he did not read that are awesome, and like you will be like, how is this middle grade book? This is insane. So in that way, it was actually awesome, and I didn't feel like I was gypped, because like I said, I could have read The Rats by James Herbert, which would have been super gruesome, way more than this, but this still satisfied my need for blood, or my lust for blood in books. It was awesome. So the prompt I read this for was a prompt I based off of the movie Free Willy from 1993. And the prompt said, you know, what would happen if Free Willy took his revenge on the human race after he was set free? Read an animal attack or animal revenge book. So yeah, like I said, this fit the bill perfectly, and that seems to be a subgenre of horror, animal attack books specifically. It seems to be a subgenre I really dig and like a lot, because I haven't found one book that I've read with this theme that I didn't like. Like, I read The Rue. I know my friend Juan didn't like The Rue. He hates it, actually. I don't know why. I know he says that it could have been more. I really thought it was fun. Like I said, I'm just apt to like those types of books because I just like that subgenre a lot. So The Nest I freaking loved. And this one, no exception, I loved it too. That's why I'm ranking it so highly as I'm going through my least favorite to favorites. So I'm gonna give this one, or I did give this one, a 4-star rating on Goodreads because it was fun. It actually doesn't have the best ratings on Goodreads. Some people are like, I was expecting more. I didn't like some of the kid characters. Those are good criticisms, especially the one about the kid characters. There's one character, it's like a little boy who's super obnoxious and annoying. Just like, kid, just you're annoying, shut up. I'm tired of you. I don't know. I didn't like him very much, but otherwise, the carnage is what you want to read this for. And again, if you're looking for something quick but still has that blood, this is it.
Clawed legs were severed and dripped down the window in murky, scarlet fluids. In her haste, Marge had bitten her own tongue. Shock and panic had made her slam her mouth closed, and blood leaked through her teeth. By the time she turned to the driver's window, the rats were leaping into the cab by the dozens. They stared at Marge with small, mean eyes. Marge threw up her arms, but the rats were already hurtling through the air towards her. They were ferocious beyond hunger as they landed on her head. Their claws dug in and began ripping the skin off her face. Close up, Marge thought the paws were like baby's hands, bald, embryonic hands with shards of razors protruding from the fingertips.
Like, this is amazing.
Her cheeks burned as if they'd been doused in acid. The rats were tearing and biting the skin from the insides of her thighs. Several had crawled up to her shirt, and they bit vengefully at her naked arms and shoulders. In a moment, the rats had covered her face again. She felt the claws that tore into her eyeballs. She screamed as the paws scraped and bit into her sockets until the rats' teeth were at the gateway of her brain. Rats were hanging, crawling upside down on the rotted roof, screaming like bats and vultures from hell. Several dozen rats began to drag him along the deck by his hair and the skin of his back. Another rush of the rats were biting the mate's lips, ripping off his cheeks and nose and ears until there was nothing left of his face but a sickening, bleeding pulp.
This was great. Okay, I don't care what anyone says on Goodreads. Come on, you can't beat that for a middle grade book. That's insane. And it was so fast-paced in terms of it was so easy to get through. So I was like, hell yeah, this was a great book to read from a readathon. So I'm happy with it. Like I said, 4 stars. It was enjoyable as hell, in my opinion. Next up is the only book that I ended up changing out on my original TBR for this November readathon. Originally, I had slotted this for one of my prompts. This is a Buffy novelization. It's not really a novelization in that it's an actual creative story based on the Buffy TV show. So it's an original story that takes place in the universe, essentially. So this is part of a trilogy called the Gatekeeper Trilogy, and it is Buffy the Vampire Slayer Out of the Madness. And it looked great, but look how long it is, 1. 2, the real reason I put it aside was because this book takes place kind of, I think, late season 2, early season 3, and I actually was rewatching Buffy during November, which was really appropriate because 1, I have a whole prompt based off of Buffy, and 2, Buffy's from the 90s, so it's all super thematic for nostalgic 90s November. And so I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun, rewatching some Buffy, and I got to the beginning of season 2, and I have since, now that we're in December, taken a break for Christmas stuff. I'm gonna pick back up like in January, I guess. But I just didn't want to read a book that was set a little bit later than where I was currently in terms of the show timeline. I was earlier than this book takes place, and that would have bothered me reading it. So I was like, there's no way I can do that. I have to change my book for this. So the prompt itself was, in every generation, there is a chosen one, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In the 90s, no character, male or female, was stronger, more fierce, or more admirable than Buffy Summers. Read a book or story with a female main character, or a horror book or story written by a woman. So obviously the Buffy book had a female main character, and it was Buffy, so it was super appropriate for the prompt. Like I said, unfortunately, I really had to change it out. I just could not stand the difference in the timeline. So I decided to replace it with Monster. Now, Monster was written by Christopher Pike, not written by a woman, which is part of the prompt, you could choose to do that, or you could choose to do something with a female protagonist. So this one actually has 2 strong female characters who are the only ones who really know what's going on in this town, because the town, a lot of stuff's happening, and everyone thinks that this girl's crazy when she goes and shoots up a party, but really she's trying to save the town from monsters. So hence the name Monster of the novel. This actually is really bloody for a YA book. It was my first Pike read, will not be my last. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Creative, great end. In fact, the last line is really, really good. It had some really poignant moments. I don't know, it just had it all. It had some like on the edge of your seat parts, it had some clever writing, it had everything. I don't know. I really liked this one a lot. Thought it was a great Pike book to start with. I'm hoping that I like all of his books this much because this one was so much fun. I know my friend Alex actually prefers Pike books that are more like based in reality. This one has like a supernatural flair, it feels like a little bit, but I didn't mind that. I personally like that a lot and I enjoy it. But some people might not. Some people might like his more thriller books where it's like a human killer type of thing. This one, there's more at play. I think the title kind of screams that, so I don't think it's a spoiler. I gave Monster a 4.5 star rating. I'm going to round it up on Goodreads. And again, super enjoyable and also quick and easy. I read this in like a day. My friend Katie loved it. She's on Instagram. I'll link her Instagram below, her handle and stuff. She said she loved this. We were DMing about it because she was reading it too. And she just, I think she gave it a 5 out of 5. She was like, this was so good. I really thought it was quite dark. I was like, I know. Yeah, it was awesome. And it fit the prompt because, again, there's these 2 women characters and they're the ones who are trying to fight for what's right. They're the only ones who can really see, you know, things for what they are. All right, and now we only have 2 more left to talk about, and obviously these 2 next books will be my 2 favorites since I saved them for last. All right, here, I've already kind of talked about this on my channel when I did a live stream, like in the month of November, right after I read it, actually. So this is Endless Night by Richard Lehman, and it was my first Richard Lehman book, and oh my god, I want to read Richard Lehman every month now. I really love this book. It was so freaking exciting, so fast-paced, so on the edge of your seat. I know I said this already on that live stream where I talked about this, but I yelped at the end of this because I was so invested in what was going to happen to the main character, Jody, that my boyfriend came running in. He thought that I yelped because, like, I was hurt or something, but no. I was just like, no! Like, things were happening, and I was like, no, no, no. I would only suggest Richard Lehman if you can suspend your disbelief and just go with the flow, because there are points where you're like, come on now, like, you know, this wouldn't happen, this is extreme. It is fiction, so, you know, you do have to suspend your disbelief no matter what fiction you're reading most of the time, but some fiction is more believable than others. So I do find that this book had some unbelievable stuff happening at points, but that didn't bother me. I loved it. I freaking read this in 2 sittings, and it's like 470 something pages. Specifically, let's see, I think it's like 471, if I'm correct. Yeah, 471. I never read that fast, ever. In fact, when I had put this on my TBR, I was like, is this too much? Like, should I even attempt this? Like, look at this. I was a little worried about the length. But this was like the easiest book to read for the entire month. I was like, oh my god. And I read it like kind of early in the readathon, so I was worried that I wouldn't really like any of the other books as much. But as you will see in a second, I liked one book just as much, if not more. And also, I liked almost everything. Even though I rated, you know, The Troop and Funhouse and Overdue kind of low, and I put them at the bottom of the list, it doesn't mean I didn't enjoy them. They were fun and easy, and The Troop wasn't easy, specifically. Overdue and Funhouse were easy, not The Troop. The Troop was a little difficult, and because I read it after this. So right after this, I read The Troop, because I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? Like, I thought it would be fun, but no, it was too much. So the prompt that I read this for was based on, of course, Home Alone, hence why I'm wearing my Home Alone shirt. It's because I did have a prompt based on that movie. So the prompt says, keep the change, you filthy animal. Being home alone can be scary. So can being lost in New York. Read a book or story where the main character has to fend for himself or herself, or has to face things alone. Or to twist the prompt into a different but still thematic direction, you can read a home invasion story. So this begins as a home invasion story. Sorry for the fingerprints on the book, I'm just seeing this now. But our main character, Jody, is basically at the sleepover from hell. Because as she's sleeping over at her friend's house, all things go to hell and to shit because intruders come in, and it's a night that Jody will never forget, and things develop from there. Can Jody escape these intruders, these madmen? And also, same Katie I'm talking about, my friend Katie who read Monster, she also read Endless Night, and she also loved it too. She was really happy with it just like me, and she's like, oh my god, it was so good. I was like, I know! And I talked about this on Juan's channel when I did a collab with him, and I'll link my collab with him below when I was talking about most disturbing books. I listed this as one of the most disturbing books that I've read, and in a way it is, but it's also fun. So it's got like a cozy fun feel because it's so page turning, but at the same time it does have really off-putting things. For example, as I quoted in Juan's video, my friend Katie said, kilts made out of human skin. What more could you ask for? Exactly. So yes, there is a kilt made out of human skin, and like that's the type of gruesome stuff that is disturbing that's in this book. Not only that, just the main antagonist is so despicable and detestable, and what he wants to do to Jody is just gross and obscene and just, ugh. Very cringeworthy and disgusting and scary. Being a woman, I was so afraid for Jody. Not that a man wouldn't be afraid for Jody too if a man was reading this book, but I just think, like, you know, since we know what that fear is like, and, you know, we could extra relate to her being scared that something would happen, that she would get taken advantage of or something. So yeah, that made it even scarier. Like, please, Jody, like, don't get Jody. Like, that's the whole time I'm like, don't get Jody, don't get Jody. So yeah, I loved it. I had a blast reading it. And I'm trying to plan my next layman read. January is actually the month that my birthday falls in, and that's like my free reading month, even though I am trying to do like winter themed books. But I was trying to pick out a layman book for January because it is a free month and I am reading for fun more than like a theme. And I was like, oh, it would be great to kick off the year with another layman book because I enjoyed Endless Night so much. But I kind of wanted to have like a colder themed layman read, and I can't really find one. Or at least from the descriptions. They, like, sometimes when you try to search for season that a book takes place, it's hard to figure it out. So I don't know if there is a layman book that takes place, like, in cold weather or winter time. Like, I know he's got some stuff that takes place during Halloween. I don't necessarily want that. Just, like, you know, cold and isolation. I don't know. We'll see. Even if it's not a cold book, I might pick up a different layman book and just read it just because it's my birthday month, I guess. I don't usually celebrate my birthday all month long, but just, like, you know, since I'm doing this whole freedom thing where I could be free, I don't have to be so strict with, like, a theme for my month, then maybe I'll just go off the rails and not do a winter type of book, just do any layman book, and I think I'm going to enjoy it. Now, if I pick up another layman book and it's not like this one, I don't know what I'm going to do, because this one was so good. I want to feel that feeling again where you just want to keep reading into the night, and after it's over for the night, after you're done reading, you want to just get back to it right away as soon as possible. Like, that feeling's great. So this had that for me, and I rated it. I didn't give it a 5-star, which I'm still debating on, like, was that right to not give it 5 stars? Because it feels like it should have gotten a 5 stars. At the same time, like, layman isn't known for great writing, and it's not like this thing is super elegant in terms of the writing style, as I referenced. And so, like, that makes me be like, I feel weird giving it, like, a 5-star with all the weird sexual stuff he writes about, but, like, at the same time, it was so, like, great and gripping. I'm so torn. But I technically gave it a 4.5 and I rounded it up on Goodreads to 5, but technically I gave it a 4.5 star rating. And so it feels weird not giving it a 5, but I don't know. There was a part with guns where they were training Jody's friend on how to use a gun, and I thought that was kind of boring. That only took up like 3 pages though. Like, how can you really fault it a half star for like 3 or 4, maybe 5 pages at the most, out of 471 pages of freaking nonstop fun and action? So in that case, I don't know, maybe I'm being extra harsh and just trying to find a reason to not give it 5. I don't know. As of right now, it's 4.5, but, like, I could easily, like, bump it up and be like 5, because, like, when it comes to me talking about my favorite reads of the year in January, when I'm going to release that video, I think this is going to be up there as one of my favorites of the entire year, because it was so much fun. Nothing else really kept me gripped like this did in terms of other books. Not that I can recall off the top of my head. Even this next one I'm about to talk about had some slow parts. This one really didn't as much as the next one. Alright, so second to last and second favorite, I would say, as well. Alright, onwards. Okay, and last but not least, and it's actually last but favorite since I'm going from least favorite to favorite, I've only said that 1,000 times. I'm sorry, I'm such a repeater. But this one I'm really excited to talk about because I did give it a full 5 stars. And the funny thing is, I feel like this is a great example about how people can have such differing opinions on a book. There are just so many elements that appeal to people that may not appeal to other people. So I'll get into the example in a second, but the book I'm referring to is Such Nice People, and that is by Sandra Scopitone. I think that's completely wrong, but yes. Wonderful old school cover. This is an old school copy. It's very hard to find. This was a great book. I enjoyed it from start to finish, but what was different about this than Endless Night was this was a slow burn. So for the majority of the book, it's pretty slow paced. You get hints of things happening here and there. Really, there's a lot of family drama, though, that takes up the majority of the book. You get a lot of characterization. I personally liked it. And the family drama was enough to keep me entertained. I don't know why I found that so engaging, the family drama, which was just like simple stuff, like the mom, she's not happy with her husband, and the husband is not happy with his wife. And so, you know, simple, typical stuff. For some reason, the way it was written, though, I was invested in these characters, and it's like simple freaking problems, simple drama. So I don't know why that spoke to me, and that didn't bother me at all. But yeah, I would even call it a super slow burn at parts. So we're going along, and some people, it might be way too slow for them. And here's my example of people have such differing opinions and how interesting that is. So my friend Kelly at Kelly Hooked on Books on Instagram, she also has a wonderful YouTube channel. I will link all that below. She read this book as well, and for my readathon. And she was going through and she was like, I'm about to DNF this book. Like, does it get better? Like, it's really slow to me. Like, I'm not engaged. I'm about to give up. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it is slow. Like, I enjoyed the beginning part, but I understand that you're not enjoying it. Like, but I would push through because the end does get crazy, personally. But I don't know if you're going to find it rewarding enough and, like, it's worth it. But she pushed through. Like, she decided to just keep going, and she ended up liking the last half. In fact, she gave it a 4-star rating, so that's not too bad overall when it's all said and done, when she was thinking about DNFing at a part. In fact, I'm going to pull up her review in a second because I think she had some good points. The best point she had, and she said this in her review, is that nothing will prepare you for the shed scene. I also mentioned this in the video I did for Juan as a reference with Endless Night too. I mentioned more than one book. This was the other book I mentioned. Super disturbing when you get to the shed scene. It blows your mind and you're like, oh my god, oh my god. And so that was worth it alone. But again, I wasn't bored with the character stuff in the beginning either. Before we got to the shed and the craziness and how everything kind of escalates, then it really ramps up. And the end, oh my god, the end, like afterwards I didn't know how to feel, and I was like thinking about it for a while. I was like, oh my god, oh my god. And it takes place during Christmas time, and at the very end, things start to really like get very suspenseful. They start to go day by day leading up to Christmas, to where something is going to come to a crescendo. Something is going to happen, like shit will hit the fan, not to use that phrase again and twice in a video. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I loved this book. I thought it was so entertaining, and again, the end really just made me feel things. I was like, I don't know how to feel. This is upsetting. So yeah, I liked it quite a bit, and the shed scene. I don't know, it's really gross. In fact, Will Errickson said something about that on Instagram recently. I will have to look up my Instagram page real quick and read you guys this stuff. So I will do some editing magic, and by the time I come back, I will have these things to read to you. Alright, so what Kelly said was, she considers the genre of Such Nice People to be everything but the kitchen sink, drama, horror, thriller, and she said, this was the slowest of slow burns, but once things picked up, it became a wild ride. Nothing will prepare you for the shed scene. Happy I read this, but do not know that it is something I would recommend to others. Yeah, it is kind of crazy at parts, so I understand what she means by that. Also, you just cannot know if people will be okay with the slower part in the beginning. I know for a fact that I think Grady Hendrix gave it a 5 out of 5, so he must have been okay with the characterization, or he at least thought that it picked up enough in the end to warrant a 5-star rating. He said it was like Ordinary People, now with added mass murder, so he liked it a lot, it seems like, but he does give away what happens in the shed, so I wouldn't necessarily read his review. And also my friend Alex read this as well, and she gave it a 4-star rating on Goodreads. She said, this is a very character-driven story. We learn a lot about each character as individuals and as part of the family dynamic. On the surface, they are a very ordinary family, but we learn that they each have their own secrets and personal demons that they are dealing with. There is a lot of social commentary here. There is, about like sexism and like gender roles and stuff. I agree with her on that, and I liked that because I felt like they were taking a stand on that, and you could tell that the author was a woman because of the way she wrote that. It was almost like the mom in the family was trying to, like, you know, move towards having a happier life and not be controlled by her husband and not be worried about like what everyone thinks of her. Essentially, she wanted to start living for herself instead of worrying about what everyone thinks about her because of her own life decisions. Stuff like that. But also, like, her husband was the worst. Oh my god, he had definite ideas of how a woman should be, type of thing. And that really infuriated me. I was like, I hate him so much. Oh my god, I hate her husband so much. So, Alex says towards the end of the book, the tension is tightened with every page. The chapters are broken down by day. And the countdown element was very effective. I love that the author wasn't afraid to go to some wild and WTF places. Dark and disturbing, such nice people is well worth tracking down. I totally agree. But for me, like, I even liked it even more than her since I gave it 5 stars. I just freaking loved it. It was an enjoyable time. Once I read Endless Night, again, that was at the beginning of the month, I really thought nothing would top it, and then I come to this kind of close to the end of the month, and I was like, hell yeah! Got 2 gems, and if you count Monster, really like 3 gems, and I really liked everything, so I was like, this is the greatest month ever! So to me, it was like one of the best reading months of the entire year for me. It was just marvelous in every way. It was a lot of fun. I really was happy with all of my choices, even the ones that got 3.5 rated down. It doesn't matter. I was happy with it overall. Alright, and here's what Will Errickson has to say about Such Nice People. And this is an interesting, almost like a fact, a fun fact, more so than like a review of the book. But I think this is fun and worth reading. So Will Errickson said, Grady, as in Grady Hendrix, and I upset some people at a party once talking excitedly about that scene. And yeah, the shed scene. So yes, it's a crazy scene. And Will also said, we tried to make this part of the Paperbacks from Hell reprint line. No luck though. Getting rights is weirdly so tricky. And that freaking sucks because this one would do so well because I think there's such hype around this one where people kind of know that something crazy happens in it that I think it would have sold really, really well. I think it's one that's hard to find, so people would want a newer edition so that they could actually read it. But yeah, I would still, if there was a newer edition, the older one's still worth tracking down for the cover art alone, because I like the artwork quite a bit. And this one was for one of my prompts. I will read you which one it was for. It was for my prompt that was based on The Nightmare Before Christmas. So this prompt said, not every ending is as sweet as Jack and Sally's. Read a horror book or story set at around Christmas time or Halloween time. So this takes place around Christmas, and I wanted to get a jump on my Christmas reading, so that's why I chose a Christmas book versus a Halloween book. Since November's in between Halloween and Christmas, that's why I thought it was cool to have it go either way. Like, you could choose Halloween and go backwards in time for that theme, or you can go ahead in time and prepare for Christmas with a thematic Christmas read. So I was happy with that prompt a lot. I thought that was fun. I might keep that one for next year because, guys, I am doing this readathon again next year for November. I hope that everyone will join in again. I'm going to change some of the prompts, but some will stay the same. I just don't know which ones. Kind of teased just now that Nightmare Before Christmas prompt might stay because I think that's such a cool idea, and there's so many books to choose from for that I think I want to keep that there. And it's a good way, like, if there's stuff in Halloween you didn't get to, then you could do it for the readathon for that prompt. Or if there's stuff for Christmas that you're like, I'm not going to get to it, I have already so much stuff planned for Christmas, then, like, read the thing that you want to get to that you're afraid you won't for Christmas for this readathon prompt. So either way, I was happy with that prompt quite a bit. But again, I loved how this readathon turned out. I thought the premise was fun. I hope you guys did too. Really appreciate you guys doing this with me and also sitting through this long ass recap of the entire readathon. Thank you guys so much. Somehow it's long, but it's hard to talk in depth about 9 books and be concise, especially when you're me and freaking you're wordy as hell. So before I go, just to give you an idea what Such Nice People is about, essentially this normal family, or seemingly normal, they have all this drama as I referenced. One of the kids of the family, his name's Tom, he's going through something. And his family are worried, is it a cult? Are we just imagining that he's acting different? But no, they're not imagining it. This dude thinks he's getting directions from some unearthly being, like some god, in his opinion, telling him things to do. He seems to want to murder his family. The whole question is, will he end up being successful or not? What will happen? Will the family find out what's going on in time? There's a lot of suspenseful things happening. So that's essentially the premise of the book, and yeah. Favorite book of the entire readathon. Very, very close second. Very super close second. Speaking of Will Errickson, not everyone likes Richard Lehman. Will Errickson hates Richard Lehman. He actually gave him multiple chances. He's got a recent, blog post on his blog, Too Much Horror Fiction. I'll link that down below as well. It's a great blog. Please check it out. Because even though we don't agree on Richard Lehman, I think Errickson's blog is amazing. I think his opinions are awesome, and I love reading what he has to say, even if we don't agree sometimes. Everyone has different tastes, and that's the beauty of reading, is that we could all talk about our different tastes and stuff. But he totally gave Lehman kind of some harsh words in terms of I don't like it, I think it's terrible trash. I can't even do it justice how he reviewed his latest Lehman read. He gave Lehman yet another shot. It was the third or fourth time he's given Lehman a shot, and he's disliked his book yet again, whatever book that he gave a try to. I can't recall what the book was specifically, but yeah. And then he keeps, in the blog, he said, Lehman fans keep telling him, no, you gotta try this one, no, you gotta try this one, and he keeps giving him a try, and it just does not work, and he does not like it. Again, that's the beauty of everything. Stuff is so subjective. My friend Kelly almost giving up on this book, whereas I was hell yeah, the entire time. So there you go, differences of opinion, but that's what makes having this community so much fun. We each can talk about these opinions and be respectful to each other, because we don't all have to like the same things. But yeah, it's just funny. You have got to go check out what, Will Errickson has to say about Richard Lehman, because it's actually kind of funny, and I can totally see the whole thing about not having the greatest writing style. I agree on that. It's not like Lehman's such a wordsmith or anything, but it doesn't matter. It was freaking a page turner in my opinion, so that's why I loved the Lehman book, and I can't wait to dig into more. But I understand someone who has the opposite feeling too, because I definitely think that this is not for everybody. I don't think Lehman would work for every single person at all. And especially if you're kind of into 100% logic, and also not into creepy older guys writing about young girls and sexual stuff, in terms of all his characters are sexualized. It's not just the girls, it's everybody has some kind of sexual undertone in a Lehman book, or at least this one. Everyone, it was oh, come on now. But again, it didn't take away from me. Alright guys, please comment below if you participated in this readathon, what was your favorite read for the readathon? And if you'd be interested in participating next year, also leave that down below in the comments, because I'd love to know how much interest is out there, how many people might be joining in for next time. I cannot wait. I've got my whole 2022 year planned. It's insane. I've got every month, got books and themes and everything all set. Again, if you haven't checked out my reading goals for 2022, I talk about all my specific plans for a lot of the months in that video, so check it out. I will link it up here. And for this time though, that's really it for me. I plugged a lot of stuff, I went through all these books. I'm done, that's it. Till next time guys, keep on killing it. Thank you, bye. Oh yeah, wait. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. It is December, and hell, Home Alone. Bye, for real this time.